So continuing on then with that example. So this is chapter 4, example 1.txt. This 5Finder module that we had developed can take a number from a user. It can evaluate that number as being greater than or less than 5, and it can display the result. This number is either greater than or less than 5. But if we go through and we actually think about the use case for this, how many numbers are there between 1 and 10? There's 10 numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. In our example here for 5Finder, what happens when the user enters the number 5? Well, actually, it's unaccounted for because is 5 greater than 5? No. So when line number 11 here evaluates, 5 is not greater than 5. So this evaluates as false. Then it comes to line 13. Is 5 less than 5? No, 5 is not less than 5. So this is going to evaluate as false. If we were to run this program as it is in a compile time environment, so take one of your pick, what is going to happen is the output on line number 7 here, the display, this program will take a number, etc., is going to run. This line number 8 is going to run. It's going to prompt the user to enter a number. It is going to get on line number 9 the input from the user, but then nothing. Nothing. Nothing is going to be displayed to the user because we have not, in fact, accounted for the number 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this. And again, I'm going to double click over here in the title bar, and I'm going to get a new untitled document. And I'm just going to paste everything that we've done into there. So I am going to save this particular program. Again, I'm going to drop it right here on my desktop. I'm going to call this Chapter 4 Example 2. That way we don't overwrite the previous example, so that when you are doing this side by side, you can actually see them side by side. And again, I have to say .txt, otherwise Sublime Text is not going to know to save this as a text document versus CSS, JavaScript, C++, fill in the blanks. So I'm going to go ahead and save this document. And what we want to do is we need a selection to figure out what happens if and when the user enters the number 5 in there. The selection structure that we need is on page number, sorry, that's what's taking me so long to find, is the page number. Page number 38 is we need the nested selection structure. Essentially, what that involves is we would have an if statement that is tucked inside of another if statement. So what I'm going to do here is we need to, between lines number 11 and 15, we need to account for what happens when the user enters 5. And that's going to be the statement that we nest. So what is that going to look like? Let me just, there we go, make sure that I've got the indent structure here correct. Just because I feel like I need to highlight this, if I select an entire block of text. So I have selected everything from 11 to 19, and I hit tab, it is going to increase the tab index of that entire selection that I've made. If I hit shift tab, it is going to decrease the tab index of that entire selection that I've made. So I have only added these lines right here, these 3 lines of text to the previous example. And this I have to indent properly. There we go. These 3 lines of text, 16, 17, and 18 to the previous example. So before I get into how we dealt with that, remember that when we are dealing with if statements, there is almost always an if, else, and if. Then you will almost always have a one-to-one relationship between those. If, line 11, else, line 13, and if, line 19. If, line 14, else, line 15, end if on line number 18. So there's a one-to-one, and that is how you'll keep track of your if, else, end if statements. Is if you have proper indentation, you'll be able to scan your eyes from top to bottom across the page. If, else, end if on the same vertical line. If, else, end if on the same vertical line. The only inclusion I have made here, the only way that this is different than the previous example is, so let's say I enter the number 5 in as the user. So here on line number 9, I've entered a 5. So number is now stored with a value, and that value is 5. Line number 11 is going to evaluate first. Is 5 greater than 5? No, 5 is not greater than 5. So this line evaluates false, and this line 12 is skipped. Else, it's going to enter into this chain down here. The first thing that's going to evaluate here is line number 14. So is the number 5, greater than 5? No, it is not. So this line, number 14, also evaluates as false. Then it's going to come here to line 16. So everything else here is accounted for. So essentially what's happening here is on line 16, the decision states, okay, if number is not greater than 5, if number is not less than 5, the only option left to me here is the number is 5, and that's on line number 17. And that is really all that happens there. So we have a nested linear if happening here. We've got this if statement, this if else statement tucked inside of or nested inside of this particular if statement. So that's it. I don't want that to sound like that is all, because operating systems are actually built on this idea of the nested linear if statement. If this particular action, then check another one. Not this action, check another one. Not this action, check another one. So we can build tremendously complex systems off of something as simple looking as what is happening here with our nested linear if statements.